So today we'll be learning how to solve quadratics by factoring. And the most important thing here is going to be the zero product theorem, which is for any real numbers A and B, if A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0 or B equals 0 or both numbers equal 0. So our first problem here is already set to 0, and it says 4x squared plus 8x equals 0. So the way we're going to go ahead and do this by factoring is write out our sets of parentheses and set that equal to 0. And so to factor this, because we have 4x squared, we're going to put 2x and 2x, because 2x times 2x equals 4x squared. And then to multiply to 8x, it's going to be plus 4 and plus 2, because 4 times 2 equals 8. Then we're going to go ahead and do each side of the problem here. So 2x plus 4 equals 0, and 2x plus 2 equals 0. So we'll solve this side first. We're going to subtract that 4 to the other side, and we get 2x equals negative 4. And over here, if we subtract that 2 to the other side, we get 2x equals negative 2. And then we do some division, and we get x equals negative 2 and x equals negative 1. So that's our first problem there. Basically what we did is factored it out into these two parentheses, where we could then go ahead and solve each side of the problem. Now let's move on to our next problem. So here we have to be careful because it's not as simple as it looks. This problem is not actually set to equal 0. So what we're going to have to do is subtract that 36, and we get x squared minus 36 equals 0. Now we have something we can work with. So we're going to go ahead and factor it the same way. And here it's just going to be x in either side of the parentheses, or in each parentheses, because it is only x squared. There's not multiple x squared. And here to get negative 36, it will be x minus 6 and x plus 6, because negative 6 times positive 6 equals negative 36. And we're going to go ahead and set that equal to 0. Don't forget that. Then we're going to go ahead and solve each side. And this one is pretty simple. It's going to be x minus 6 equals 0, and x plus 6 equals 0. And when we're going to subtract or add the 6 to the other side. On this side, it's going to be x equals 6, and over here, the opposite, x equals -6. So on that one, you just have to be careful. If this equation looks pretty simple to solve, but it's really not, because you have to set it equal to 0 to solve by factoring. For our third problem here, and our final one, we're going to use something called a GCF, which stands for greatest common factor. And so that is that's the largest number that will go into every number in our equation. And so here we're going to use 8 because 8 goes into both 64 and 8. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull out that 8x in front of it, like that, and then rewrite the inside, or the bulk of the problem, divided by 8, because we're multiplying it by 8x on the outside here. So that's going to be 8x plus 1 on the inside there. Set it equal to 0. And now we're just going to solve both sides like we did before. So it's going to be 8x equals 0, which is pretty simple. X equals 0. And on the other side, it will be 8x plus 1 equals 0. When we subtract that 1, we get 8x equals -1, and we're going to have to divide both sides by 8. So we get x equals -1/8 on this side here. So on this problem, we were able to use a greatest common factor to simplify the problem a little bit right there. So to go ahead and recap the most important parts, you just always need to set your equation to 0, and we learned that here in the zero product theorem. For any real numbers, a and b, if a times b equals 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0, or both numbers equal 0. So you have to have your equation set to 0. And you always need to look for a GCF, because that makes the problem 100 times simpler if you can pull that number out.